Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the program tonight, on a day in which video emerged, which you can see here, of the police striking anti-hijab protesters in Ghaziabad near Delhi a few days back. Karnataka's hijab row played out for the fourth day in the High Court today, with the Chief Justice hearing arguments from Muslim girls who've challenged restrictions on wearing the religious headscarves in classrooms. On the ground today, that there were more protests which took place. Here you can see students wearing hijabs versus their teachers who said that they could not attend classes because of an interim High Court order which banned all religious attire till a judgment on the matter was arrived at. So on the program tonight, we've got some very special guests, including Majiziya Bhanu, a World Powerlifting world champion who's risen to the top of her sport and proudly wears the hijab. There are others who say the hijab is regressive and should be done away with. That's our first debate. Up next on the program, with the Haryana government mandating board exams for Class 5 and Class 8, there are serious protests from parents and schools. Think about it. Does a Class 5 child who's just 9 years old really need to do board exams? That makes no sense at all, some would suggest. Well, joining us now, Majiziya Bhanu, the World Powerlifting champion. She'll be joining us, in fact, in a few moments. Amreen Zaidi, the author and columnist with us, Professor Irfan Habib, and Zeba Shireen, the leader of the Campus Front of India as well. Let me go straight across to Amreen first. Now, Amreen, arguing on behalf of one of the petitioners, the advocate in the court today asked, and I think this is an important point, why were these young women wearing a hijab being singled out when there were literally hundreds of religious symbols in our country, from dupattas, bangles, turbans, crosses and bindis worn by people every day on every occasion? Isn't that the key point over here? Why are you discriminating against people of one faith?
Well, Vishnu, it differs from sect to sect in the Muslim community. Some wear, some don't. Some say it's a matter of choice. Some say it is imposed. But my major concern here is this whole controversy is going to be a big blow for the education of Muslim girls. You know, these girls who are coming to these institutions, the ones who are wearing hijab, they're very brave girls. You know why? I'm not talking about Muskan and the other 6 girls. I'm talking about the girls who are coming from marginalized sections. Mm-hmm. They're battling the odds. They're battling the orthodox beliefs. They're battling the Sharia laws. They're battling the diktats of the clerics of their areas. Yet they're coming to these institutions to study.
Just one point, Amreen, is there any evidence to suggest that any of these women have been coerced in wearing the hijab? I would suggest they haven't been coerced, it's their own free will.
As far as we know and what we have heard and what the girls say, it's their choice, and they've been
Correct.
wearing it. They've been wearing it since they were very young, 3 years, 2 years old.
So let me put that question across, in fact, to Zeba Shireen, the leader of the Campus Front of India. Zeba, the argument which is raised by many is that the hijab, there is one argument about, denying a woman a hijab is unfair because people of different faiths already wear religious attire, and we have to have, a fair system of laws. But there's the other entire argument that the hijab is regressive. What does it actually represent, and is that something that we want? How do you, in your personal life, address that second question? I think you're on mute. Will you unmute yourself? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I need to answer it to you that I'm here representing a Muslim community, wearing a hijab, addressing one of the top media, one of the top news channels in the country, and still they are asking me, still they are talking about Muslim women wearing hijab as regressive, oppressive, and I'm here addressing the media wearing the same hijab. So how can they ask me? What a ridiculous question they are asking. hijab never oppress a woman, but what a hijab, what a wearing, a choice of wearing clothes is upon a personal choice. This is not a matter of religious choice, but also a constitutional violation. So we are addressing it as a violation of constitutional right, and those students, those girls who are protesting out there are protesting just because their fundamental rights have been violated. So,
in fact, Professor Irfan Habib, that's the key point over here. It's an issue of identity, and you cannot, take away a person's identity, whichever faith they consider to be their own. And therefore, in a situation like this, it's not enough for us to perhaps even get into the argument on is it regressive, what does it mean, when it's about individual choice. That is a key part of our constitution we are bound to protect.
You see, when it comes to a situation where it has reached today, and the sort of India we are living in today, where each and every, even a small matter becomes a huge issue all over the country. And it becomes a divisive issue. In this case, my own opinion, and I've expressed it elsewhere as well. I have my view on hijab, because, and that's not the debate now, because I don't want to get into it, whether it is really Islamic or not at all, or it is based on Shara at all. All those issues actually are not relevant anymore. What is happening today is that some girls who want to use their right to cover themselves are being denied, and there are people who are protesting or harassing or heckling these young little girls at the gates of the schools, in the streets, on the road. Now, this is something with saffron scarves, because they have no business. The girls have to settle it with the administration, with the court. That they can do. Whether I agree with that or not, that's a different issue altogether. But nobody has any business to come and protest and heckle these girls.
But Professor Habib, why don't you also get into the part of the question which you are reluctant to get into?
Yeah. I'm not reluctant.
Is the hijab regressive? I ask this because it's a question which has been asked by others, and I wanted your views on that.
For me, it is regressive. I don't personally approve of it, and I don't see anything.
Why?
Anything. Because you are trying to make yourself different. You want to use it as identity, while you are actually identifying yourself as different. No, for no reason, because your religion doesn't say that. You have to dress modestly. That is for men and women both. No, so that definition of modestly, dressing modestly, has been defined by people differently. Now, if you have asked me, give me a few more minutes to explain. If you see this hijab, or this which is seen differently, hijab is also of different styles.
Yes.
All over the world, there is no one hijab. Then there is a covering for women in Afghanistan, a particular style of burqa. You have a different style of burqa somewhere else. You have a chadar in Iran. So which one is Islamic? I just don't know which one is it. Because Islam in Quran specifies no way to cover.
All right.
It just says you have to dress modestly. That's why I'm saying it is not actually Islamic. No, a child, a 4-year-old girl, when parents cover her up at the age of 4, obviously it becomes like a shirt or a shalwar or pants or whatever. No, it's part of their everyday
Right.
Covering the body.
Right.
So obviously they feel awkward when they go out, when they grow up, which is natural, and I agree with them that they feel uncomfortable.
Okay, so you've made lots of points. Let me just quickly get Zeba to respond to some of them. Zeba, again, and I must ask you this: the entire issue of what this means, is it in some way, shape, or form regressive? The professor feels that it is. How would you respond to that?
No, I need to tell you that we must more focus on the issues that here happening rather than whether hijab is oppressive or not, because here I have mentioned about the countries like Afghanistan, Taliban, Pakistan, etc. We are living in a country like India, and it has a diverse religious faith and beliefs, and also then I need to ask you whether, like, are you blind on the issues that is happening here, or are you only focusing on the oppressiveness of hijab
No,
or dress
not at
code?
all.
This is a matter-
Zeba,
yeah.
if you've seen what we've been focusing on now for 1 week, me personally, it's been every aspect of this, every aspect of what's happening in court, every aspect of the protests, every aspect of the education which has been lost for right or for wrong. But this is a question that needs to be asked, and I don't see any problem in asking it. And the professor has a perspective, so I'm asking you whether you agree or disagree. You evidently disagree, so I'm asking you why. That's why. And this isn't to take away the sanctity of what is happening in court. Not at all.
Hijab is never oppressive, and the girls itself is asking and demanding to get their rights to wear hijab. If it is oppressive, they won't, nobody will allow themselves to be oppressive, to wear a dress code which is oppressive.
Okay.
The girls here are demanding it themselves. Like, they want to wear it, it's their freedom of choice. Which is mentioned, which is ensured by the Constitution under Article 19, to express their religious identity. So this is not a matter of oppression, or we must more focus on the word like headscarf. Use headscarf more than hijab, which makes more controversial. Like, when we using hijab, it becomes the discussion leads to niqab or burqa something. So we can replace
Yeah, it results in stereotyping, which is wrong. I take that point. Amreen, let me come to you next. I think one of the most troublesome aspects of this entire debate is the manner in which this ban on hijabs or headscarves was in fact imposed on these students. Straight away, without notification, without a discussion, almost instantly, and the question is at whose behest? I think, in a country which has a constitution, how do you enforce something as basic? Isn't that also something we need to look at?
Yes, exactly, Vishnu. Something which could have been sorted out between the four walls of a principal's office has been made into an international issue. Everybody is talking about how India is treating its Muslims. So if 6 girls went to the principal or the management committee with a request, they could have, found out a middle path, given them a room to study. Since it's a women's college, there was no point to make it such a big issue. But then now we are at a point where slowly and surely this entire issue is flaring up.
It is
the girls
flaring up.
Are, yes.
These protesters were hit in Delhi.
And you know what? The issue has come now, but you must have noticed we have girls at top-notch positions at various companies. They're doing so well.
Yeah.
Why is the issue so relevant and so controversial now? Why? What scares you?
I think that's absolutely the key point. In fact,
Yeah.
Zeba, that is the key issue, isn't it? Why is this happening now, when in fact Muslim women have exercised this choice for decades? It's not been a topic of conversation, just as it's not been a topic of conversation when we speak to a Sikh man wearing a turban. It's not a topic of conversation, or a Christian wearing a cross. I think that's also sad, that this has been a debate which has been foisted upon members of the Muslim community, women in this particular part of Karnataka, when it has been a non-issue.
Exactly, Vishnu. That's the question. That's the point out here. Like, women, Muslim women have been wearing hijab, have been practicing religious practices inside the institutions, in the workplaces, and everywhere for decades. But suddenly from nowhere, the question arises, and the ban on hijab came, which is backed by the BJP government. There comes the conspiracy behind it. That's the question that we have to address it, because the protesters, like BJP has claimed that there has been violences and other things happening, but the protesters here, the hijab wearing girls, have never done any violences in any of the places, but rather ABVP and Jagran Bedi students, their people, have been creating violences, stone pelting against colleges and the protesters of hijab. And the flag, the national flag has been replaced, and the saffron flag is hoisted. that such an anti-national practice has never been addressed by any of the BJP leaders.
Right.
There comes the issue. Who are behind this? Who are the persons who is instigating these students to wear saffron shawls? And properly they have been created.
But Zeba, it has to also be mentioned, since you are the leader of the Campus Front of India, that the Campus Front of India has also been accused of instigating these women to wearing the hijab and saying that we will stick with the hijab and not with our education. It's an allegation. I'm asking you to respond to that.
No, the the students have itself approached us at the end of December and asked for the solidarity and support for their protest, for their fight against the hijab ban. So we are still here protesting for giving all the support to them, and that's how Campus Front have involved in this issue. So BJP and other leaders like Hindutva have always considered some allegations like anti-national. They called anti-national the protesters against CINRC and called the protesters against the farm bill like Khalistan Wadis. And also against the hijab ban, the protesters have been called the anti-nationals. It's just called as a Muslim controversy. This is so much clear. Like who is behind this?
That's sad. The labeling which happens all the time. Professor Habib, just very quickly, I need to wrap this up. Yes, sir.
No, I have no disagreement in the politicization of the whole issue. It has been done very blatantly, and we can all see it. It can be seen in the perspective at a national level, the way a particular section is being targeted on different issues. So that is absolutely visible. One can see that. My issue is that Campus Front, for example, should find ways to resolve the issue, because I'm more interested in the education of the girls, because that is more important. It should not be done at the cost of something called hijab. Let the courts settle it. No, you go back to your classes. No, find ways to actually get back to your classrooms, because that is more important. You are actually losing a lot. No, you are not gaining anything actually by doing it. So any group which is supporting them should actually find a way where girls can go back to their education, and this particular issue of hijab.
Right. While it is being heard
because
in court.
It is in the court now,
Correct.
in sub judice, so let the court decide.
Let the court decide.
Why my education should suffer.
All right. I think that's a key point. I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. I'm running out of time on this, but let's hope that the court decides very soon on this, because again, it's the education of young people at stake. When we're talking about education, there is what some would suggest a bizarre decision by the Haryana government to state that class 5 students, many of whom would be 9 to 10 years of age, and class 8 students need to be given a board exam over and above the exams which they already have in their schools. So if they are CBSE students or ICSE students, they are marked and they are evaluated in their schools, but there has to be a standardized examination as well across both boards. But why would one want to make a 9 to 10-year-old child sit for a board exam? It seems to be quite strange. Pradeep Rawat, the founder of the Gurgaon Parents Association, joins us, as does Aditi Mishra, Director and Principal of DPS Gurgaon. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Ms. Mishra, let me come to you first. Besides the rules and the laws, what does it do to a 9 to 10-year-old to be sitting for an examination which is called a board examination? Forget about the learning or what they have to learn and write down. Are children socialized or psychologically at that age should they be able to do this?
Not at all. In fact, most progressive boards of the country do not have exams till class 5. There is a continuous assessment through pen and paper tests or through quizzes and through activities. There is no examination till the age of 10, which is class 5. The first standardized exam, school exam, comes in class 6. So this is something which we have never heard of, having an exam for class 5. Having a board exam, so to say, is even more preposterous.
Right. Pradeep Rawat, one of the big problems, as I understand it, is that the Haryana government is asking for class 8 students to appear for these board exams sometime in March. So these children in class 8, after 2 years of an online education, will be put through a board exam at the end of March, which actually takes place just a few weeks after their own school examinations are getting over in many cases. So how many exams do our children need to take?
To be very frank, I totally agree with the fact that this is a quite bizarre decision, especially on the part of the government, to literally ask children who were in the studying basically online at home for the last 2 years. And the kind of education, I'm not blaming particular schools or the kind of education that was provided, but since the children were kind of in the age group of 9 to 12, and what they were studying in online education, suddenly they are being asked to come out of the homes and attend school, and that too by giving board examinations. Board examination itself is a kind of a pressure thing. You right from the day you attend a school, you have a feeling that you're going to give your first board exam in class 10th, and then you go for the next examination at the class 12th. But I believe a child who's been at home for the last 2 years never actually had a proper schooling, the kind which is expected from a school or a child. But now the thing which is basically hampering the growth and the mental setup of a child is he's in a kind of a trauma that suddenly he's been asked by the school authorities, yes, you're going to have a board examination, you'll be under pressure. And the basic thing is now all students, earlier it was kind of supposed, as madam just mentioned, that till class 5th basically no student was being failed. But now what happens if a child who's in class 5th goes for a board examination and God forbid if he fails? What kind of mental trauma is going to go through? Right. That is something beyond my imagination.
I think, and Ms. Mishra, another point over here is that we have different boards. There's the CBSE board, there's the ISC board as well, and now the Haryana government wants to hold a standardized examination across both boards. There are more than subtle differences in the education of both boards. So what does the child prepare for?
No, there is also the IB and the GCSE.
Right.
So the Haryana board wants to have an exam for all national and international boards. And obviously, every board has a different curriculum. And fortunately, all schools have autonomy to follow whatever curriculum they want till class 8. The standardized test comes in the 9th and 10th. So I don't know what kind of exam they're even planning to have. Which school would have done those modules or those concepts? I mean, for me as a principal, it's a very scary thought. I don't know what kind of panic the children and the parents would have, but I am panicking at the thought of a standardized exam for a 13-year-old who hasn't been to school and has gone through various stresses in the past 23 months.
Right. And so therefore, what is the way out? I mean, in your mind, Ms. Mishra, is it just to scrap these exams altogether, or is there any way in which a child can be further assessed by the government, by the board?
I don't see why they should be worrying about assessing them. It hasn't happened in the past many decades. Why start now? Okay.
In fact, let me put that question, ma'am, across to DP Kaushik, the spokesperson of the BJP in Haryana. Mr. Kaushik, can you explain the sense on why this is being done? Why must a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old in class 5 have a board exam? Why?
देखिए सर, ये तो आरटीआई जो कांग्रेस सरकार लेकर आई थी उस टाइम तक भी हरियाणा के अंदर दोनों बोर्ड लागू थे, और 5th और 8th का दोनों बोर्ड पहले से स्टार्टिंग थे. बट कांग्रेस सरकार के आने में उसके टाइम वो ये इन्होंने डिसीजन लिया था, भाई 5th और 8th का एग्जाम कैंसिल किया गया था. तो अब सरकार ने उसका कुछ देखा कि बच्चों को एक अच्छी शिक्षा उनका पता चल जाता है, बच्चा 5th में कहाँ है, 8th स्टैंडर्ड में
पर एक चीज बताइए, हरियाणा में ISC, CBSE, IB, GCSE कई बोर्ड है, तो आप एक स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड एग्जामिनेशन कैसे देंगे इन छात्रों को, क्योंकि उनके सिलेबस अलग अलग है.
देखिए, अगर सरकार ने डिसीजन लिया है तो सर उसका भी पैटर्न तैयार किया जाएगा. तो ऐसा
कैसे तैयार किया जाएगा? सवाल तो यही है ना, सब पूछ रहे हैं, पेरेंट्स पूछ रहे, स्कूल प्रिंसिपल्स पूछ रहे, और ये भी पूछ रहे कि जरूरत क्या है एक 9 या 10 साल का बच्चे को एक बोर्ड एग्जाम में बिठाना. इवैल्यूएशन तो एग्जाम के अलावा दूसरे मेथड से भी किया जा सकता है.
नहीं, अगर देखिए मैं समझता हूँ कि एग्जाम बोर्ड का लेना मतलब 9th का बच्चा पहले भी तो दिया जाता है.
9th का बच्चा नहीं, ये 5th और 8th का है.
नहीं, 5th 8th का, मतलब 9th ईयर की बात कर रहा हूँ मैं.
जी, 9th एज, हाँ जी. तो 9th तो क्लास 5 तक. और एक और सवाल ये है कि बच्चे को, अगर ये बच्चा ये एग्जाम में फेल हो गया तो उसको क्या उसी क्लास में रखा जाएगा या उसको पास किया जाएगा? क्योंकि नियम अनुसार एक उम्र तक
तो
सब बच्चे को पास किया जाता है।
नहीं सर, ये देखिए पहले नियम अनुसार तो पहले आरटीआई जब लागू हुआ उससे पहले तो 5th के एग्जाम होते ही थे ना, 8th के एग्जाम भी हो रहे थे। तो मुझे लगता है कि एग्जाम अगर लेने में दिक्कत क्या है बोर्ड के एग्जाम में?
नहीं, एग्जाम तो है, एग्जाम की कोई मना नहीं कर रहा है। हम सिर्फ ये बोर्ड एग्जाम के बारे में पूछ रहे, क्योंकि स्कूल्स में तो ऑलरेडी एग्जाम्स हैं। कुछ स्कूल्स में तो क्लास 5 में एग्जाम्स है भी नहीं। खैर, दूसरे स्कूल्स में है एग्जाम्स, और जरूर क्लास 8 में सब बच्चों का एग्जाम्स है। उसके अलावा एक और एग्जाम देने का क्या जरूरत है?
देखिए सर, जो भी चीजें सरकार ने की हैं तो कुछ सरकार का भी दायित्व बनता है बच्चों को अपने प्रति की जिस तरह की बातें आ रही हैं।
Okay.
तो बोर्ड का एग्जाम अगर मैं कहता हूँ इसमें प्रॉब्लम क्या आ रही है सर?
Okay.
सरकार ने अगर कोई स्ट्रक्चर तैयार किया है तो उसमें मुझे
उसमें प्रॉब्लम क्या है? ठीक है, तो प्रदीप रावत जी हमारे साथ है। ही इज द फाउंडर ऑफ द गुड़गांव पेरेंट्स एसोसिएशन। प्रदीप जी, दिक्कत क्या है? व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम इन हैविंग वन मोर एग्जामिनेशन इज व्हाट दे आर आस्किंग। व्हाट इज योर रिस्पांस?
Sir, to be very frank, even the student of class 10th and 12th who are supposed to give the board examinations, even they are literally scared of coming out of the houses and giving exams, simply because they too were in the houses for the last literally 2 years and there was hardly any offline education. So basically what I fail to understand, how can we literally ask tiny toddlers, the kids who are in class 5th or class 8th, to come out of the house, go for a board examination and feel free to be able to, kind of have a feeling that yes, I want to give in a board exam. Because what happens really is that when a child is at home for the last 23 or 22 months, he has seen what kind of a devastation our country or any country in the world has gone through. We are lucky that way, that we are safe, we are doing well as a country. But what I still believe is, as a child feels that yes, this is not the right time. Even the parents, as a parent, I also feel the same, that this is not the right time to ask a child to come out of the home, especially for board examination, and make him feel that you are going to give exam, and in case, God forbid, you fail, you will be retained in the same class.
Ms. Mishra,
so that is already a pressure.
Sure. Ms. Mishra, my final question to you, the reason I was asking you whether there could be a way around this is because lots of schools, for example, subscribe to asset tests. Now, this is entirely voluntary, but schools encourage their kids to do this, and it's not in the syllabus of ISC or CBSE, it's separate. If the Haryana government is proposing exams, could it not be similar to this in a sense? Except, it's not given in your school, you have to go perhaps.
So if it's optional, let schools which want to opt for it, go for it. I don't believe in having an exam which is imposed, especially at this time. And please, we must also remember that schools make their schedules a year in advance.
Right.
Our exam is planned now. Our session starts in the 3rd week of March. If the Haryana government now wants to have an exam starting from the end of March, what does it do to our calendar? So our children will come to school now in the next class in the end of April, because the exam will take at least 10 days and there'll be correction happening. So their result will be declared only by the end of April. I don't see it coming before that.
All right.
So how can we bring about this?
How do you fit this in? And let's spare a thought for who we are talking about, our children. Thanks very much, everybody, for being with us. Out of time on this program. Need to take this short break. A couple of questions have come in on coup. I keep forgetting sometimes. Old age. Why do we need board exams to evaluate the performance of children at this age? I think we've discussed that. Samir had that in. Chandra writes in, says it's good if 5th and 7th become board, as parents will get clarity on how their children are studying. It's 5th and 8th, but is this the only way parents can get clarity on how their kids are studying? Shouldn't parents actually be knowing what their children are studying, perhaps on a daily basis? We'll take a short break. More coming up on NDTV. Stay tuned.